Greetings from Prosper and Prosper. This is episode 2 of Broadcast from the Balcony. Today, I wanted to do a video on the Silmarillion and Tolkien in general. I just finished a few videos on Tolkien. I did a little bit from the Lost Tales, the Tale of Tinuviel. I started saying Tale of Tinuviel. And over the course of an hour-long story, it turns into Tale of Tinuviel, which it is. But I say both are a bit like tomato. And oftentimes with Tolkien, you have words in front of you. And especially with the Silmarillion, there are so many names. And the names like Baladur and all the different, the Lords of the Dunedain and all these different groups and the Numenorians. And if you ever listen to my video on the Rings of Power in the Third Age, you'll know that there's a great bit of repetition because these groups are involved in so many adventures. So over the course of I thought in all of the Silmarillion, I brought the Silmarillion out, my mother's copy she got to share with the audience. I thought the iconography on the cover was inspirational. And inside there's many tales of many times, but I thought the finest of them was of the Rings of Power in the Third Age. And I thought I'd read a little bit of it to you today. And I thought I'd read you the bit of the best, because it tells the whole tale. It tells the whole tale of not just after the Silmarillion, which is in this book, but it tells the tale of the Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings, and all the ancillary tales and there's a little Tom Bombadil in here, not very much, but I figured I'd read my favorite bit of the favorite bit of the Rings of Power in the Third Age. Of all the days of the Third Age, after the fall of Gil-galad, Master Elrond abode in Imladris. He gathered there many elves, and other folk of wisdom and power among all the kindreds of Middle-earth. He preserved through many lives of men the memory of all that had been fair, and the house of Elrond was a refuge for the weary and the oppressed, and a treasury of good counsel and wise lore. In that house were harbored the elves of Isildur, in childhood and old age, because of the kinship of their blood with Elrond himself, because he knew in his wisdom that one should come of their line to whom a great part was appointed in the last deeds of that age, until the time came that the shards of Elendil's sword were given into the keeping of Elrond, when the days of the Dunedain darkened, and they became a wandering people. And Eriador Imladris was the chief dwelling of the High Elves, but as the great havens of Lindon, there abode also a remnant of the people of Gil-galad, the Elven King. At times they would wander into the lands of Eriador, but for the most part they dwelt under the shores of the sea, building and tending the elven ships, wherein those of the firstborn grew weary of the world, set sail into the uttermost west. Ceridan the shipwright was lord of the havens, and mighty among the wise. Of the 3 rings the elves had preserved unsullied, no word was ever spoken among the wise, and few even of the Eldar knew where they were bestowed. Yet after the fall of Sauron, and their power was ever at work, where they abode their mirth also dwelt, and things were unstained by the griefs of time. Therefore, ere the Third Age was ended, the elves perceived that the Ring of Sapphire was with Elrond, and the fair Valley of Rivendell, upon whose house stars of heaven most brightly shone, whereas the Ring of Adamant was in the land of Lorien, where dwelt the Lady Galadriel. A queen she was of the woodland elves, the wife of Celeborn of Doriath. Yet she herself was of the Noldor, and remembered the day before days in Valinor, and she was the mightiest and fairest of all the elves that remained in the Middle-earth. But the Red Ring remained hidden until the end, and none save Elrond and Galadriel and Ceridan knew for whom it had been committed. Thus it was in 2 domains that the bliss and beauty of the elves remained still undiminished, while that age endured. In Imladris and in Lothlorien, the hidden land between Celebrant and Anduin, where the trees bore flowers of gold, and no orc or evilling dared ever come. Yet many voices were heard among the elves foreboding that, if Sauron should come again, then either he would find the ruling ring was lost, or at best his enemies would discover and destroy it. But in either chance the powers of the 3 must then fail, and all things maintained by them must fade. So the elves should pass into the twilight, and the dominion of man begin. So I wanted to read just a little bit of that in the way that it demands to be read ultimately. And as I started that for that video where I read the whole thing, and I read it in 2 blocks, and I read it in the first half-hour block, and it just got to the point with the Nazgul. If you get half an hour into that video, you can forgive me because I have the enthusiasm for the work, and I have a love for the work. And so it starts out the video starts out a little more like the Elven language is a little easier to do in that more posher voice. So it starts off that way, but then it starts to kind of evolve into using 3 different narrative accents, which kind of like I thought was interesting. I kind of read each segment from that the way that it demanded to be read. I did one take. I kind of like went with how I felt, what I remembered my mom reading that to me, with how the pronunciations went. And also, you spend some times in the Lord of the Rings mythos. You get some understanding of how to pronounce things properly. But, a lot of it, especially in that specific 20 pages, which is that work that was recorded for an hour. And other people recorded it in a half an hour. I don't know how they did that. They sped it up. I feel as if some passages take time to really roll over. There's a rhythm to it. I was talking to my friend James about Beowulf and how, the language of Beowulf, that rolling river over green grass, that kind of thing, it has a rhythm to it. And it's almost a meditative rhythm. It's almost like definitely the language of that is very religious. And so the religious nature of the vocabulary there demands you to use almost like, and he meant it for an old rustic country audience. And so that old rustic country preacher's tone is a really good one to tell that tale with. But then there's parts of it where you're talking about the elves and other parts where you want to use more of a Toffington voice or a more of an elegant elf voice. So I kind of segue between them. And it gets a little bit like, over an hour of listening to something, over an hour of narrating something, it gets to be a bit like you want variety. And in so many of these new audiobooks, they're using multiple people to do voices and do themes. And I just listened to The Sandman not too long ago. And they have a dozen different people, they do different voices. And it's really cool. But having one person that does variety, it doesn't take you out of it as much as having multiple people and this person said and that person said. I'm talking to my wife about a project we're doing, multiple projects going on, recording multiple audio for multiple books, and trying to collect the best of books and share it with the world. And not just that, original works too, but original works also that are inspired. I was talking to my friend James, and he reads more fan fiction than I do, and I don't really read too much fan fiction. My wife writes fan fiction, and I like alternate fiction. I like alternate histories. I like imagining what might have been. And sometimes that's more interesting than the original work that inspired it. And so I've got 3 original tales planned, all inspired by the works that are going to be shown. And I'll probably read some of this from the balcony for sure, where it's in the Lost Tales, Volume 2. I thought the best thing in there, which was the Tale of Danuviel, as I mentioned before. But in this tale, one of the mini bosses, who's the Lord Liege of Lord Melko, Dark Lord Melko, he's Tevildo, Prince of Cats. And I thought, this guy gets a really bum rap in the Tale of Danuviel. So I thought he deserves a tale from whence he came. Where did this strange cat prince come from? How did he get the powers? How did he forge his golden collar? How did he learn the words of magic from Melko to turn over his cat friends into his servants in his magical castle? And where did he go after the dog lord defeated him and stolen his golden collar? Where did he go next? What did he do? So these are the things that will be found in the Tale of Tevildo. And I'm working on the Tale of Tevildo, and it's kind of like fan fiction. It's a fan fiction novella, and what it's going to be is it's going to be where did he come from and where did he go after the Tale of Danuviel ended. And so that's Tales 1 of 3 of the ones I'm doing. The other one I'm doing is I want to connect the universes. So I just finished this Mossflower book, and we'll be doing a separate video on Mossflower and Legend of Luke and some of these Pearls of Lutra and some of these Mossflower books I love of Brian Jakes's. But, there's this Verdolga Green Eyes, this cat. And I thought, charming thing to connect the 2 stories somehow. And you never know what could happen with some of these other ideas. And so we'll probably do multiple stories coming up. I'll talk more about those in other videos. I hope to be here with Sarah soon. Who could deny us if we put our keyboard here and Sarah was to play a tune and we were both to sing a medley of tunes? So this may be on the horizon for us. Readings from original tales, readings from fan fiction novellas, things that were inspired by what I've done already and what I've learned and remembered, and things that were pulled out of thin air as if by magic. So who knows what could come next? Who knows what could come of it? We're hoping that you have a wonderful day here in the world we have to offer, here in the beautiful sights we have to see, here in the nature of our earth. And we hope you have a wonderful day and tune in for further broadcasts because we're trying to do whatever we can to make this a fun time. Yes, indeed.